Our last lesson of the year is going to be about mammals. Now, since there isn't a bell ringer that will be due on Monday because we aren't taking grades after today, I've included it here on the screen. So please take a second and think about characteristics of mammals. Make a mental list of as many characteristics as you can. Don't forget things like where they live and what they eat. You can pause the video to think about your mental list, and then when you're ready to keep moving on, go ahead and push play. There are two objectives that go along with this section. The first is to explain how early mammals lived, and the second is to describe 7 common characteristics that mammals have in common that they share. So scientists believe that there are approximately 5,000 modern species of mammals. Now that is an impressive number, it might seem, but completely dwarfed by the number of, let's say, arthropods that are out there. Insects alone are going to outdo the mammal population by thousands. So fossil evidence shows that mammals have been around for a long time. Remember that when we talk about estimates in millions of years, we're talking about science from an evolutionary perspective, which assumes that these slow changes that produced all of the species over time needed to take a lot of time. And as Christian scientists, we don't necessarily need the millions of years for some of the changes that we see within species, because we operate under the assumption that God created the species, and they have perhaps changed, but they have not evolved in the same sense. So the way that the evolutionary scientists see it, and part of the reason we talk about this, because you will see it again in high school, just so you're familiar with the terms and sort of understand the differences between the perspectives, which is indeed what they are when we're talking about things we don't completely have evidence to prove. But scientists identified a specific fossil, which according to their carbon dating methods dates back about 280 million years. It's called therapsids. These reptiles, these fossils, scientists believe shared characteristics of both mammals and reptiles. So they see that as the link in the evolutionary chain. And there's a picture of what scientists would envision the therapsids to look like on the screen here. The first mammals, scientists think, were endotherms, meaning that they were able to regulate heat, and they were very small, so about the size of a mouse. When the dinosaurs died out, the land and food supplies were more wide open for the taking, and they made the conditions possible for mammals to continue to live and to thrive. There are a couple of characteristics that all mammals have in common. For one thing, they all make milk. For another thing, they have specialized teeth. And we'll talk about some other characteristics upcoming as well. The most important characteristic, though, is that all mammals have mammary glands, or all female mammals, I should say, have mammary glands. These have the ability to create milk, and that milk is always used to nourish young. It's made of water and then also proteins, fats, and sugars, which are great energy boosters. So the milk that mothers secrete for their young is about the best possible thing that a young mammal could have in order to grow and to develop. The milk formulas are going to vary between species. Human milk, for instance, has more fat in it than cow milk does. It has to do with what those individual species need in order for the young to develop most efficiently. All mammals also have lungs, specialized organs which allow them to take in oxygen. Remember that oxygen is very important to cellular respiration, the process of each individual cell making the energy that it needs to do its job. Animals breathe air using lungs, and the lungs are powered by a muscle that actually sits underneath the lungs called the diaphragm. It's a smooth, large muscle that basically contracts and relaxes. And when it contracts, it moves down. When it relaxes, it moves back up into its original position. When it moves down, it sort of acts like the suction in a syringe, and it pulls air into the vacuum that's created in the lungs. When that muscle relaxes and pushes back up, it's sort of like you taking the end of a syringe plunger and pushing it out. The air is forced out of the lungs. Now remember, when the lungs take in air, it's full of oxygen. When the lungs release that air back into the atmosphere, it's now full of carbon dioxide waste product. All mammals are endothermic, which means that they use oxygen to create energy, and that energy helps to keep them warm. Endothermic beings, animals, are able to survive in cold areas, and they're able to stay active when weather is cool. Remember that exotherms start to shut down when they get to be too cold. Mammals are also the only animals that have hair, and that hair serves a lot of functions. It's going to add an extra layer of insulation in some climates. So think of fur, like on the polar bear from the last screen. That helps the mammals to, again, live in cold climates. Most mammals are going to have a layer of fat under their skin as well, which also acts as insulation against the cold. Some animals that live in especially cool environments, like the whales that can live up near the Arctic Circle, have a thick layer of fat, which we call blubber, that also acts as insulation and helps to protect against cold ocean climates. Mammals also have specialized teeth, like we said a few slides back. Oftentimes, the original teeth, the teeth that they have in infancy or childhood, are going to be replaced by a more permanent set of teeth later on. Humans have 3 different types of teeth, and these 3 different types allow us to eat both meat and plants. So we are omnivores. We can eat what the carnivores eat, and we can eat what the herbivores eat. And so if you were to deal with a mammal that's an herbivore that only eats plants, you would only see the plant eater teeth. And if you were dealing with a carnivore mammal, you would only see the meat eater teeth inside their mouth. So humans have incisors, which are used for cutting. They're located at the very front of the mouth. You have 4 on the top and 4 on the bottom. They are common to plant eaters, so you would see those in herbivore mammals as well. Canines are carnivore teeth. Meat eaters are for eating meat. They're used for stabbing. They help to grab food and hold on to it. They allow you to tear. So if you have a piece of meat that's really tough, you would grab it with your canines, and then you might pull with your hand or pull with your fork to break that meat apart. And then you have molars as well. Those are in the very back of your mouth. They're used for grinding teeth, and you would find molars not just in omnivores like you and me, but also in plant eaters. The video on the screen goes through all of these types of teeth and gives much more useful information about them. I'm going to ask you to watch that. That will be on my website after this lesson video. Mammals reproduce sexually. We don't see any asexual reproduction anymore when we get to our more complicated animal species. Most mammals give birth to live young. Newborn mammals are going to stay with their parents until they're grown, so there's that nurturing element to parenting in mammals. You'll learn more about this reproductive process next year. I'm not going to get into it and spoil your last day of school, but just hang tight when we talk about, and when you talk about humans and human anatomy, you'll learn a little bit more about this too. And last but not least, mammals have large brains. I said a few slides back that they are among the most advanced or sophisticated animals out there. This is in large part due to their large brains. Mammals have larger brains for their size than virtually any other organism. So that's not to say that they are like always the biggest. You might notice that the mouse brain on the screen and the cat brain on the screen, they're fairly small. But we're talking about the size of their brain in proportion to the rest of their body. And so if you think about it, an elephant's brain is larger than a human's brain, but an elephant is also tremendously bigger than your average human. Large brains allow mammals to do a number of things. For one thing, it helps them to learn. So not only to assess a situation and respond to it, but to make an educated response based on past experiences and past shared knowledge. Mammals are also able to think. They're able to process and respond in logical ways to situations. They're also able to respond quickly. So not only are they able to learn and to think, but they can do those 2 things very quickly and then generate a response. That has to do with a large brain and also a highly advanced nervous system. And our nervous system, remember, has the spinal cord that runs down our back, and that spinal cord is protected by vertebrae. So mammals are also considered vertebrates and chordates farther back on our classification system. Senses help mammals to make decisions about the world. These are tied into their nervous systems, their large brains. Senses include vision, hearing, smell, touch, and taste for mammals. Oftentimes, the strongest sense organ that a mammal has is going to be related to its highest order needs. So for instance, the mouse might have a very heightened sense of hearing because it needs to be able to hear predators coming. Whereas you and I might have other more finely tuned senses depending on our needs. Even within the human species, Homo sapiens, you see different people have different sense organs that are work more effectively. For instance, if somebody has lost their sense of sight, their sense of hearing might be a lot stronger than for you or for me. Likewise, if somebody has lost their sense of hearing, their sense of touch might be stronger, their sense of sight might be stronger than in you and in me. And that is that. So your only homework for tonight is to have a great summer, enjoy the nice weather. I know it's sort of a bummer that we can't get out and do all the things we might want to do, but we can make the best of it, and we can use this time to rest and to maybe learn some new things. So there are a couple of things to remember here on the screen. You can pause the video and read those through. Once you're done, there is the teeth video as well for you to just take a quick look at. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great summer. Hopefully I'll get a chance to talk to you later.